Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program with myself, Martin Blackham, and with my wife, Nathalie Blackham. Great to have you with us. We're so excited today to be with you in your homes, bringing you news and behind the scenes of what's happening in Israel, particularly today with all the events that are happening in the world and the importance of knowing from Israel what the perspective is on all the world events. And one of the interesting things is that from a biblical perspective, we need to be awake. It says that Yeshua said it's like the days of Noah. We have to be ready. We have to be awake for his return. And we have to look at the news with a biblical perspective. And that's what we do on the Israel First TV program. Now, there's been a big major development with the Yemenite children affair. This is something we've talked on the program before about the Yemenite children affair. One of the sad stories, but we'll go through it so that you'll know what it is. But first of all, you need to know it's called the Yemenite children affair. Basically, in the story, a toddler's bones have been sent for genetic testing. Family hopes DNA verification will provide answers. Shulamit Melamed was told that her son had died in hospital. This was many years ago, but this is part of the Yemenite children affair. She was told that her son had died in hospital, but she never saw a body. Listen to this, or a death certificate. So no body, no death certificate. More than 70 years later, the family that's today hopes to uncover the truth behind the circumstances relating to the child's disappearance. We're talking about thousands of children, not just one child. The family is saying that their children were adopted by Israel. During the 1940s and 1960s, Israel's health ministry and welfare services seized several thousand sick babies and children. This is children who are having fever or were ill from North African, Middle Eastern, Yemenite families, and then informed the parents that their children had died. So the children were taken by the Ministry of Health, and then the parents were
brought to the hospital.
And that they were told their children had died. Many families have said that nobody was seen. That's the dead child that was never seen, and no death certificate was ever issued. They also said that they did not receive any information from Israeli organizations as to what had happened to their infants. The fact that the parents were typically informed of the child's death after long delays, given contradictory stories about how their children perished and were not allowed to view the bodies, led many to believe that their family members had been abducted and put up for adoption. Medical officials on Wednesday, that's this Wednesday this week as we've come in the studio, exhumed the body of a baby who's believed to have died in 1948 in Tel Aviv. In this latest effort to determine the fate of a child born to a Yemenite immigrant whose family believes he was kidnapped. The grave, marked as belonging to Yosef Mel Ahmed, who was pronounced dead in the hospital after suffering an illness nearly 75 years ago, was opened on Wednesday morning in the Nahalat Yitzhak cemetery close to Tel Aviv. Melamed's family does not believe the child died or is buried there. His mother, Shulamit Melamed, now in her 90s, believes instead that her son was kidnapped and adopted and is still alive today. She's not been told about the exhumation due to concerns it could have a negative impact on her health. Mom didn't feel that he was dead from the beginning. The fact that he was buried so quickly was suspicious to her, Ruti Sharabi, Yosef's sister, told Ynet news site. If the grave is empty, we will still be questioning where he is, but at least we'll know that he's alive. Yosef was born to Shalom and Shulamit Melamed, who arrived in Israel from Yemen in 1943. Remember, we said it was the Yemenite children affair. Shulamit, 17, took her 1.5-year-old son to the hospital in Tel Aviv and was later told, that was after he fell ill, and was later told the next morning by hospital staff that the baby had died overnight and that they had buried him at the Nahalat Yitzhak cemetery. So here's the thing. The baby is taken from her. She doesn't ever see the baby in the hospital. She doesn't see the baby who's died. She doesn't even see him taken to the cemetery. The burial was done without her. Shulamit believes her son to be dead until 1963. Listen to this. When she received an army conscription notice came through the post for him. Now, let's just explain that. In Israel, we have the draft for the IDF, the Israel Defense Force. In other words, it's a compulsory draft. Everybody who's male of a certain age is called up to the IDF. You can do voluntary service instead, but everybody in the country at the moment and for many years has been called up. Now, in 1963, her son was called up. This is the son who was buried at the Nahalet Yitzhak cemetery. So it doesn't make any sense for a army conscription notice to be sent to somebody who's deceased. In December 2021...
And it would have been, anyway. Mm-hmm.
In December 2021, Haaretz News exposed a draft report on the Yemenite children affair, which the Israeli Health Ministry had tried to cover up. It revealed that the involvement of doctors, nurses and caregivers in the taking of the Yemenite children and acting as middlemen in their adoptions, sometimes in exchange for money. So this is a very concerning affair. Why is it coming out at the present time? Why is it coming out today? Because we are starting to see things revealed that were hidden and things brought out into the light from the past. So this is a very concerning story, and we'll keep you up to date as to what's happening with it. But
which is, we can see, is like when I read in Jeremiah many years ago, it was written, in the end of the time, Arachit Hayamim, everything will be revealed. And like everything will be uncovered. And this is one of the story too. Everything will be uncovered for the people who wants to know. It's just amazing.
And it's very important that you're aware of the story, because it's something that has been covered up for many years. It is slowly coming out into the mainstream media, but is being very much, tailored to the government story. So it's a very sad story, but it's something very, very important for the families to have closure. The families who, even today, as we've come into the studio, are suffering in this matter. Now, one of the very big concerning stories that's happening in Israel at the moment, it's something that's happening across the world in these days, is the control of money. That we are seeing governments all over the world trying to control money. Well, the same thing is happening in Israel. Globalist control of money has come to Israel. From the 1st of August 2022, this year, cash transactions above 6,000 shekels are illegal in Israel. In other words, you cannot pay more than 6,000 shekels in a transaction. Offenders face significant fines.
And you can't do checks either.
No, cash or checks. Offenders face significant fines, and those splitting payments can be jailed. Unbelievably, the law, as Nathalie said, applies to checks. We're really seeing surveillance society outworked. The stated purpose of this law is to force the general public to use digital means of payment rather than cash, so that transactions can be easily monitored. I'll repeat that again. They're making people use digital means of payment so the transactions can be monitored by the state. This is Big Brother, the surveillance society.
Yeah.
And so, we are seeing the Big Brother come into the money situation, which is quite shocking, really. There are some exceptions. The payments between private individuals, for example, purchasing a property, have a higher cash threshold, though that too is set to drop next week from 50,000 to 15,000, which is, I don't think you can really buy a house for that. The threshold for a car purchases is the exception and will remain unchanged at 50,000 shekels. Again, It means if the car is more than 50,000, how do you buy that other than by digital? You have to do digital. No, that's the thing. You can't do checks. You can't do part payments. Around apparently, this is what the news is saying. Around 5 billion have already been collected in fines since the restrictions were voted into law. Tens of thousands of audit raids on businesses have been conducted by the tax authority, with thousands of violators penalised. In 2022 alone, around 6,000 audits have been conducted so far. The change of the law will mainly affect the self-employed freelancers, such as renovators, plumbers, etc., for whom the difference between 11,000 shekels and 6,000 shekels will have a very big impact. The change will also have a detrimental effect on those renting or renting out property, as the threshold will be dropping from 50,000 to 15,000. Individuals and businesses selling products such as electrical goods and furniture will also be greatly affected by the lowering of the ceiling for cash payments. So this is a very concerning move, but it's part of the whole thing. Is there is so many things changing, and I want to talk a bit about that, subject to time, about the fact that we're not in the normal anymore. We're living in the abnormal. And then just one final thing, and I think Nathalie's got things she wants to share with you. Israel, as well as doing the monetary thing, is following the globalist agenda, which is very concerning for ourselves, but I know many of you are Israel watchmen out there and are very concerned about this. Israel is following the globalist agenda and the so-called climate crisis. And they've been saying that it will lead to unstoppable, massive wildfires in Israel. Israel Fire and Rescue Services say purported climate crisis is expected to cause an increase in massive wildfires in Israel, particularly in populated areas, due to the fact that despite the fact, that most wildfires are caused by human activities, such as unattended campfires, discarded cigarettes, arson, and so on. So in other words, climate is not the reason for wildfires. And wildfires is a very big problem in Israel, because there's being in the Middle East, the temperatures do rise and there is a lot of forest.
And there is no water. It's not raining from around May to October, September, October. So everything is dry.
Right. In the United States, North Carolina professor Joseph Rosie, who studies wildfire behaviour and prevention to gain a better understanding of how wildfires start, has said human carelessness is the biggest factor contributing to wildfires. That is not climate change. And there's no mention of climate change. Israel is just following the globalist agenda of saying that climate change is affecting everything.
Illusion.
Right. And Israel's incoming Fire and Rescue Services Commissioner E.L. Capsby has even set up a special climate crisis committee 3 months ago. Climate scientists allege that hotter temperatures cause wildfires, which is simply not true. In the United States, for example, 90% of wildfires are caused by humans. This is according to their statistics. Human-caused fires result from campfires, burning of debris, equipment use and malfunctions, negligently discarded cigarettes, intentional acts of arson. Natural causes only account for a mere 10%. So the question is, why set up a special committee for something which is so small? The World Wildlife Fund goes on to say, as a general rule, only 4% of all forest fires have natural causes. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources in the United States goes even further and says that 98% of all wildfires in the state are caused by people, not climate change. So, meanwhile, Israel is setting up this E.R. Capsby, Israeli's firefighting commissioner, is setting up this climate crisis committee as the top threat facing Israel's fighting forces, which is complete nonsense. Israel Fighting Forces says it will require 3,400 firefighters to deal with the expected massive fires, which is a very good which is very concerning that they should say that, because you can't expect wildfires. They happen, but it's not something expected. So why are they expecting wildfires, Nathalie?
Like last year.
So,
Last year there was a very, very big one. You have to know, like, the forest, we have a lot of forests next to Jerusalem, and the forest next to Jerusalem is like the lungs of the city, and we have wildlife. I mean, it's just amazing. And we had a very, very big fire last year, and because we live not far, we were waiting to hear the aeroplane, and the aeroplane didn't arrive. They arrived very late. And we know some people who were there who lost the Harari family. They lost all their workshop where they were making the harps. Just amazing. And we went to see them. And they told us the same, that the aeroplane took so long to arrive on that time. And we say, we know, because we realized we could see the fire. It was already so big and no aeroplane. So
these are aeroplanes that help to put out the fire, special ones, yeah. They're fire-fighting aeroplanes.
Yeah, with the powder and everything. And obviously you have to take it as soon as possible, because after it's getting more and more difficult. Anyway, so yeah, is illusion. Now I want to tell you a bit, is it, yeah? Can I now? Is like, I want to give you, sometimes when you walk and you look at the stones while you are walking so you don't fall, and you don't see the big picture. And we need to look at the big picture to understand what's happening and where we are at in the time. Now, the menorah has 7 branches, and it's really to also show us the time where we are at. So you have like the two, okay, so like in 2 Peter, and it's also in one of the Psalms, is written 1,000 days. No, sorry, 1,000 years is like a day for God. And so for him, when you look at the menorah, you can see 7 millennium. So there is 2, which was like chaos. It was the time from Adam to Abraham. God was starting to, God started the creation and something was messed up. So it was like the 2000 of chaos. Then you have from Abraham to, I would say, Yeshua. And this is the time of the Torah. So Torah was given. Torah means instruction. Very often in our Bible is written the law, but is not translated the right way, because Torah means teaching. So when it's written in the Psalm 119, which is a beautiful psalm, where David say, how I love your law. No, it's how I love your Torah, because you are giving me instruction how to live. There is so much wisdom. And so it's there. So this was the 2000. So you have 2000 of chaos, 2000 of Torah. Then we have 2000 of the end of days. Because when you read in the New Testament what Yeshua was saying, he said, we are already in the end of days. He was at the beginning of the end of days. And now we are at the end of the end of days. And we can see things like there is a maturation of the time. And then we are very close to the end of the 6,000, and now we are going to arrive in the millennium. So we are in this junction, which is very, very troublesome. But we have to think, like when a mother is going to have a baby, you go through the process of birth, which is hard work, which is resistance, but the baby is going to be born, and then you forget all about the labor, and suddenly you have your baby, and it's like everybody's happy and all. Okay, this is the same. We are at this junction between the 6,000 and the 7,000, and we're going into something totally new. And so God is preparing us. Now, very interesting. I was listening to a summit this week, and it was Jewish people speaking about the redemption, because this is part of the final redemption, okay? And when we arrive at the final redemption, we are going to be free. Humanity is going to be free. And now is like, and it was so amazing to hear some Jewish people saying, now is like the Goyim, which is the nations, and the Jews is like we are all, there is no more boxes, okay? It's like us being connected with God, and the Torah is for everybody. Now, we knew that as when we move with Yeshua, but a lot of things with Christianity has, like, there was replacement theology who just erase all the Jewish things or our Jewish inheritance in one way. And because Jesus was Jewish, he's our master, he's our Lord, he's our rabbi, we say. And so he didn't cut all the things from the Jewish people, but the religion has cut that. And now we know so many Christians are going back into the Jewish roots because they can see that we can't understand even the New Testament. I tell you, you can't understand deeply the New Testament and the words of Yeshua if you don't understand the Torah. You can't. There is a depth of what he's giving that you need to know to be able to understand or start to understand. Okay, so this is very important. Now, can I carry on again? Mm-hmm. There was some other thing that I wanted to tell you, again, that I've learned during this summit, and I thought, oh, this is so important. And is with the Hebrew language. I was listening to this summit and I'm like, they are not speaking about the Hebrew language. Something is missing. And suddenly a lady was starting to speak about the Hebrew language. I was, yes. And she was speaking about healing. And I know that God has done things also in my life personally a lot with the Hebrew language, because it's giving you an understanding of who you are with God, who really God is, and God is good all the time. There is bad things that are happening, but it has nothing to do with him. He's always good. He wants our best for us, and he's doing everything to be good. Now, this is interesting because if you go in heaven, there is nothing bad over there, because that's it. You've learned what you had to learn. And when you have good things, you don't learn anything, you just enjoy it. But we're on earth to grow and mature and understand who we are and get closer and closer to God. And God said, my purpose is to bring heaven on earth. So we are his little co-workers, I would say, or not little co-workers, we are his co-workers. We are co-creating with God, okay? And so with the letters is very important. Let me just show you. So when you speak about like God is good, is like Adonai Tov. Okay. By the way, there is a very profound things to show the God character. He's Tov, and I can't remember the name exactly, but it's like he's also goodness. There is only goodness in him. Okay. So God is good. When something is good, you say, Tov, Tov me'od, everything is very good, okay? It's what God said when he was creating. And the opposite is Ra. And Ra is bad, so you use the Resh and you use the Ayin, okay? It's the two letters, Ra. I wanted to show them so you can see the letter Resh and Ayin. Ra is bad, okay? But listen to that. When you put the letter Ra, when you put the letter Resh and Ayin the other way, is like Erev, Er, and Er means to be awakened, is to be like shaken. And so sometime in our life when we have Ra, when we have bad things that are happening, is because God is pushing us, saying, hey, I want you to mature, I want you to learn something. And the trouble is when we have all the good things, we don't learn. Really, we don't really learn. And so this is just amazing. This is what, and I was saying to Martin, look at these 2 years, because of the Ra, because of the bad, of what's happening around the world with the, all the things that's happening. He has awakened our souls. He has awakened us to say, okay, where are we at? What is God doing? And he has matured us. We have changed. We are not the people that we were 2 years ago. He has done a big work. And I know he's done a big work in a lot of people, saying materialism and all this thing is not the big dream. It's like, us to be connected with God, us be connected with each other, be in alignment with God. And he's like sometimes bringing sickness and things. Oh, they were speaking also about sickness, saying that like in Gematria, the number of chesed, which is the goodness, like loving kindness of God, is the same. And it's like, you can see that when he brings something, when he uses something and a disease or something in for us, is like, I want you to go further now. I want you to see, and sometimes there is not, and he wants to clear that up in us, in our family, in like the ancestry. He wants to do an amazing work, and is what he's doing. And again, when we're speaking about Jews and Gentiles, there is this amazing psalm, which is 126, which is again about the redemption. And it's like, you can read it, you know, it's like when God started to, it's the Jewish people saying that when they are going back from Babylon, they will be like dreamers. And the Goyim, the nations, say, look what God has done with you. Okay, it's the Goyim, it's the nation who said to them, look what God has done. And then they say, wow, look at what God has done, because they've been so pushed down, in exile, persecuted, and suddenly they can't see anymore what God is doing. And the nation say, look, you have your nation again. Look, you have your land. Look at what God is doing. And suddenly they are waking up and saying, look what God has done with us. This is just amazing.
So we are seeing world events that we've never seen before, because it's preparation for redemption. Now, in Matthew 24 it says, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be as in the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. So there's a separation of people who know that there's something wrong, who know that there's a globalist agenda, who know that there are events happening that are wrong. And there's another group who are accepting, who are going the way of the multitude, the narrow road and the wide road that leads to destruction. So it's a separation of these two groups, and knowing that things are not normal, and they're not. They are certainly not normal at the moment. We're living in the abnormal. And this is because, why do we think like that? Like Nathalie was saying, since 2 years, is because God has awakened us to see the events, to be watchmen in Israel for you, to tell you what's happening. And it's been shocking over the last 2 years, the events that we've seen, with starting off with restrictions that we've never seen before, locking people down, closing businesses, forcing people to have an experimental injectable, forcing children to have that. You know, there's been a huge shift, I would say, Nathalie,
and
with everything. And then, of course, the globalist agenda with money, and it goes on, and there are many other issues. I'm sure you're aware of them. And by the way, if you want to keep up to date with what's happening in Israel and the events here, you can go to our media webpage on the website. We put a daily news story on there. Also, if you want to support us, if you're convinced that we are very important for you as watchmen on the wall of Jerusalem, that you'd like to help us, then we do need your financial support. We have a donate button on the website, and you can go to that, and you can help us and support us. And it's because of your support, faithful partners, that we're able to bring you this program today. Now, if you'd like to email us, we love to receive your emails. They're very important to us. Then go to info@israelfirst.org. As I say, there's the website, which is www.israelfirst.org, which has a lot of information on it. And remember, we are the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.